To help us unpack this latest development in Mozambique, we're now joined by Willem Els, who's a Senior Training Coordinator at the Institute for Security Studies. Willem, thanks very much indeed for joining us. When we last spoke, it looked as if the SADC forces, Rwanda, were making some headway in dealing with the insurgents, and it almost seemed as if they had either withdrawn or they were forced back. Does this latest attack come as a surprise?
Good evening, Peter. Yes, indeed, we saw that Rwanda cleared out the two areas, the one of Palma, as well as the district of Musumbua de Praia. And that is where they now formed a security sort of sector around the gas of Total, but explorations of Total. But we see that what happened is after they cleared that areas, they actually moved in on the insurgents at their main base, or one of their main bases at Mbao, not far from Chai. And they attacked them and they drove them actually into the neighboring districts without any backstops towards the west and the south. So that now led to the situation that these groups have regrouped, and especially in the dense bushes around Chai, they regrouped and they have been launching several attacks in the recent weeks in that area, that's in the Makumia district area, as well as in the Nangade area in the north. And then also we saw that they moved to the neighboring province of Nyasa, where there were several attacks, and also the day before yesterday, there was the first attack in the neighboring province to the south in Nampula. So it seems that these guys have been pretty active ever since the Summon Forces has moved in.
So what does this tell us, though? Does this mean that there is a good number of them, or that they are moving around and moving around quite quickly, that it's making it difficult for the SADC forces to make headway here?
Yes, Peter, you must understand the demographics of the area. Incidentally, the town of Chai was also the town where the very first shot was fired against the Portuguese rule by the Frelimo insurgents back in 1964. And the reason why that is such a good area for insurgents to operate in is that it's quite mountainous, and as well as it's got dense indigenous forests. So these guys can move under the canopies of these forests undetected by air support, but they also can move around on foot and on motorbikes where your armored vehicles of your summon forces cannot reach them. So they have actually a free reign. It's a very good area for them to operate from. They hit and they run and they go back to where the safety of the bushes.
An ambush suggests foreknowledge. So do they have some sort of intelligence in terms of the movements of the SADC forces?
Yes, Peter. Unfortunately so, even as far back as when the Wagner troops were deployed there, the Russian security guys that were there from Wagner, they actually withdrew after they suffered heavy losses due to the ambushes that inflicted heavy losses on them. These guys are excellent, and it seems that they perfected the art of laying a very good ambush in that area. So they inflicted heavy losses on both the Russians as well as on the Mozambicans, and we also saw now on the South African or the SADC forces. So, and you cannot do that without foreknowledge. One of the strong points of these insurgents over the past few years was their intelligence, or they managed to build up a very good intelligence network. They seem to know almost everything that is happening before it happens.
What does this mean then in terms of the SADC forces trying to get on top of this?
A few things. We saw the remedy of the Rwandans is that they started to keep information to themselves. They did not share as frequently. We also know that, unfortunately so, in the past, the forces from Mozambique working with them, they are compromised. Some intelligence has been leaked in the past, as well as with the police of the Mozambican forces that are working there. So I think SADC or the SADC forces will have to tighten up their security. They will have to look at the leaks in their intelligence network, and they will also have to then keep it closer to themselves and only share on a need-to-know basis before they deploy. Because you cannot work, you cannot operate in a situation in these circumstances in an environment like you have in Cabo Delgado if you do not have secure intelligence.
This insurgency began, we say, around about 2017, but it's only really probably last year when the SADC region started to deploy and take this quite seriously. Is it starting to look like one of these long-term insurgencies?
Peter, unfortunately so. You know, these type of insurgencies all over Africa, when they started off and they were tackled with a pure military approach, it never worked. So we can see what happened in Somalia, for instance. The insurgency started way back. They have a very strong military approach to trying to solve it, and it's not working. Years and years later, it's still there. So we will have to look at stabilizing the area, and then they will have to start to win back the hearts and the minds of the people. You know, these insurgents, they can only effectively operate in an area where they are welcomed by the local people. So if they don't have the local support, the local people flush them out and do not want them there, they cannot freely operate. So it is imperative that Mozambique, as well as SADC, start to look at a more holistic approach where they start to win back the hearts and the minds of the local people and then rebuild the province of Cabo Delgado.
What might be giving the locals an incentive not to report and help the authorities to deal with the problem?
But in our recent studies, we found that money plays a big role. Many of these young insurgents are lured into the group by promises of big money. And also, you know, these guys can flush around money in a province that is extremely poor, where you don't really need to have a lot of money to buy people. So that is one of the challenges that they have there. So we will have to look at rebuilding the province, or not only rebuilding. You know, these people have been, they like I mentioned in our previous interviews, that the Palma of Pemba is 1,500 miles from Maputo. It's very far from Maputo. These people feel that they are neglected, and they are neglected. If you look at the infrastructure, if you look at the development of that province, it's like way behind the south of Mozambique. They will have to look at rebuilding or building up that province and giving that people hope. There's no hope in that province. I spent a few weeks there just a few weeks ago, and there's no hope. These people need hope. They need a future, and someone will have to come in. The government will have to come in and promise them, and also deliver on a future for these young people. That will lure them away from these insurgents.
Is this likely to start moving further and further away just from the Cabo Delgado province area?
Yes, Peter, indeed. We saw that even just after the deployment of the summoned forces, they also deployed a contingent towards the neighboring province of Nyasa, because they received information that the group is going to move there in that direction. And yet, in recent weeks, they did, and there were several attacks, several abductions, etc., in that province. So what made that province also very suitable for these insurgents to roam is that it is one of the most sparsely populated provinces, and also it's got stretched out indigenous forests. Like I said, it's extremely difficult to move there by vehicle or to spot them by plane, so these people can really move there. We saw that was also one of the main routes of Frelimo when they infiltrated from Tanzania against the Portuguese, because of the area that is so suitable for these type of insurgencies. So yeah, they started to move in there, and then also, like I mentioned, there was an attack near in Nampula province that is just south of Pemba, in the province south of Pemba. So it is really troublesome, because there were also some attacks in the Tanzanian side of the border as well. That gives us an indication that they're not just operating within the province of Cabo Delgado, but they spread their wings, and also that they've got a support base and they've got the reach to reach these other provinces as well.
Will we start to see some insecurity in major centers like Beira, maybe even Maputo?
It is possible. It is possible. When I was in Pemba now, it was very tense. There are lots of roadblocks. It's on a knife edge because of the expectancy that there might be an attack at any moment. These guys are well operated, are well organized, and we do not know. We do not have information that they have cells in other provinces or cities like Beira, or even as far south as Maputo. But we also know that last year there was a letter that was sent to some of the embassies where they threatened these countries if they support the Mozambican government, they will be attacked in Maputo itself as well. So that just gives you an indication that of the intentions of this group, that they will not just contain it to Cabo Delgado, but they are prepared to extend their reach.
Earlier, you talked about improving security and intelligence. Might we need to have a bigger force sent on the ground?
Peter, unfortunately so. You know, South Africa committed just shy of 1,500 troops, but we know that they are just under about 500 troops on the ground at the moment. So we know that that area is quite vast. You know, the Rwandans have got 2,000 troops on the ground just to protect the two districts that they are operating in. Now you've got 12 other or 11 other districts in the province alone that need to be secured by the SAMM forces. So they really, I think they are underpowered, they are understrength, and they will need some more feet on the ground.
Sadly, we're probably going to see more casualties in the coming months. Is that the scenario that's likely to play out?
Unfortunately, Peter, you know, if you go into a war situation, you also always open yourself up for some casualties. We also see that the area that they are operating in, where they are starting to force these soldiers to disembark from their armored vehicles to go and follow them on foot, it makes them just much more vulnerable and also more prone to casualties.
Willem, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much indeed. Your insights always greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Peter.